One day, that's it. One more day to wheel and deal before the NHL trade deadline. So, what's on the wish list for the 7 Canadian teams? To speak to that, here's Jamie McLennan. Noodles, I'm going to run through the 7 Canadian clubs, and you tell me what they should be looking for before time runs out. Let's start with the Winnipeg Jets. Tied for first overall. What's on their wish list?
Honestly, I just say health, because I think their team is quite deep. There's no weaknesses whatsoever within that organization. But you know Kevin Cheveldayoff, he likes to add at the deadline, but he likes to add with a purpose. So I think there might be upgrades in certain situations. I think their third line is the best third line in hockey, and Scheifele's having an amazing season. Perfetti has pushed through. Yes, is he experienced enough? I think they're going to give him a long leash there, but you want to add depth up front, certainly, just if there is an injury. And on the back end, you're always looking for a 6-7 defenseman. If a team goes deep into the playoffs, then you are going to experience injuries. So it's not going to be any core pieces. It's not going to be anything that disrupts this team because they're so good right now. But it is adding to the depth of the group. And if there's obviously an upgrade in any situation, you grab it, but you don't go chasing it if you're Kevin Cheveldayoff.
Fair enough. Next up, the Oilers. They've seen a lot of change since Game 7 of the Cup final last year. Now, just one win in their last 7 games, Noodles. What's on their wish list?
Well, the wish list is their players to play better. How about that? Because outside of number 29, everybody has not played to their capabilities consistently this season. So if you can get their players, the spine of their team, playing better, I still think they need a number 4 defenseman. Now, if they choose to move Kulak into that right side spot beside Darnell Nurse, then you can get a 5th defenseman and have Emberson as your 6th. And then Klingberg, if he ends up working out, your 7th, Stetcher, guys like that. But they certainly need a defenseman either in the 4 or 5 spot, depending on where you believe Kulak can play. Up front, I would say a 4th-line center can help. Nick Bjugstad comes to mind. I don't know what his situation is as far as if Utah wants to move him, but he's a guy who played very well for the Edmonton Oilers down the stretch a couple years ago and into the playoffs. They're familiar with him. Players like that can help to the depth of the group. They have to sort out the Evander Kane situation. So there's a lot of moving pieces there for Stan Bowman to sort out, but they definitely need forward depth, maybe some size and some irritability. They did address that with Frederick, but they need a number 4 or 5 defenseman to help the depth of that group. Oh, and I'm going to throw one more thing in there, Gino. They need a goaltender, but not to replace Skinner or Pickard. They need a number 3, a guy like Ville Husso, who's already in the minors. They need somebody with NHL experience because Olivier Rodrigo, Rodrigue, he's not their number 3. He's not ready to be an NHL goaltender yet.
I love how you just kind of slipped that in. Oh, by the way, they need some goaltending help. I love that, Noodles. All right, to the playoff bubble teams in the West now. The Flames and the Canucks in a battle for the second wild card in the conference. What's on Calgary's wish list?
I think you just continue to add to the group if Craig Conroy thinks that there's a trade that's available. And what I mean by that is you saw him bring in Morgan Frost. You saw him get younger on the fly. And I think, what they have right now, you've got Dustin Wolf, who's competing for Rookie of the Year right now. They've got a group that is really tight. I think Ryan Huska's done a fantastic job with this group, just battling for a playoff spot. If there is a little bit of help, that makes sense. You're not going for a rental. What you are doing is trying to add to the depth of this group this season and into the next seasons and many to come if you're Craig Conroy. So if you're going big game hunting, I know everyone in Buffalo is everyone's circling Buffalo saying his Cousins available, all the Bowen Byram, players like that. If they're going to be moved out, you certainly have to be in the mix for that for the future. But Craig Conroy, I like what he's done. It's kind of tinkering on the fly. And if you can move out maybe an aging veteran, great. If not, then you continue to build your team in the offseason.
All right, to the Canucks, the team that's seen a ton of turmoil this year, they still need help to be alive. What could they use for the stretch drive, Noodles?
Honestly, I think they just need to get their house in order. That's the biggest thing. They've got 3 Pedersens on their team. They need all 3 of them to play well, including the guy they're paying $11.6 million. So they've got to sort out the situation in-house. Who do you want to keep? Who do you not want to keep? And continue. Because let's be honest, since the beginning of last season, they've had a lot of turnover, a lot of change. Now, JT Miller goes out, you maybe settle things down. Well, it hasn't helped, Elias Pettersson whatsoever. You've got the injury to Quinn Hughes that is concerning, and they're still fighting for a playoff spot. Thatcher Demko hasn't been available to you, but Lankinen has done a good job. So they've been patchwork situation. Obviously, you're going to deal with the Brock Besser situation. If you're not going to sign him, then you've got to find a home for him or use him as an own rental. But that's why I just say for the Vancouver Canucks, get your house in order, because it seems like there's a lot of chaos and you're still trying to round it into form and formulate what you're going to do moving forward.
All right, let's head east. The Leafs in a dead heat with the Panthers for top spot in the division. Florida's pulling out all the stops. They're going hard. What's on the Leafs wish list?
Well, I think you need to add a defenseman for sure. When you look at the defensive core, Tanev's been banged up. I believe he is coming back, which is a good sign because he's a real stabilizing force. Morgan Riley's had a tough time finding a partner that's consistent to play with him. If you can go hunting for a guy, maybe a big mean guy that is available from one of these teams that are not going to make the playoffs, that would help the Leafs because, you look at how they played against the Vegas Golden Knights on Wednesday night. You look at that defensive core, they're big, they're long, they're mean. And I think that's what the Toronto Maple Leafs are trying to accomplish in certain situations with guys like McCabe. Timmins is a big body, but I think you want to be mean, a little bit meaner heading into the playoffs. And they need a number 2/3 centerman. Now, John Tavares is their number 2, but I'm just talking a guy who can give you top 6 minutes or be your third line center and definitive center. Not a guy that they move in and out. It's Max Domi here and it's Pontus Holmberg there. If you want to be deep and serious against teams like the Tampa Bay Lightning, against the Florida Panthers, I don't know if the New York Rangers make it and you end up playing them. But these teams have depth down the middle of the ice. You need to continue that if you're the Toronto Maple Leafs. You circle some names that are out there, whether it's Lawton, Ryan O'Reilly, guys like that, Braden Shen. You go after them. If you can get them, great. Your team's better. But they do need some to address some of the depth issues or certainty in their top 9 up front.
A little certainty at center. I like that as a slogan. Big OT win by the Sens last night to pull into a playoff spot. What do they need to keep this going and make the playoffs for the first time since 2017?
Well, you have a healthy David Perron now, and he's really contributing. He's a great leader. That's why they signed him. Amadio has settled into his game. They miss Nick Cousins, a guy who's really tough to play against, and continued depth up front. Zach Ostapchuk is going to be a really good NHL player, but they're giving him some seasoning. He's only 21 years old. So I would say it's more depth, a guy who can play center ice or on the wing, maybe a versatile guy in that bottom 6. Certainly, you're always looking at defensemen. They have a lot of defensemen, but you're always looking for upgrades in certain areas to help this group out. In a perfect world, when they're healthy, you've got Shabbat, you've got Jensen, you've got Sanderson and Zub. That's a top 4 that looks really good. Tyler Clevin, who's been banged up and is week to week. You want health for him because he's a really good number 5 for them. Hamanek's been serviceable. You got Jacob Bernard-Docker. So you've got players that are there, but you're always looking for upgrades and depth. So that's what I think if you're the Ottawa Senators, you're looking for an upgrade in their bottom 6 for forwards and some depth for their defensemen.
One more stop. The roller coaster continues in Montreal. 5 straight wins for the Habs. Now just 2 points out of a wild card spot. What's on their wish list before the deadline?
I think they stay the course, Gino. We've seen a team, you just mentioned it, roller coaster. But what if they end up with 87 points this season, but they go and get a rental at the deadline to try and add to this group? I think it's more the latter. I think you stay the course, and if somebody's available to help you moving into the future, again, I circle Buffalo and go, if Dylan Cousins is somehow available, Montreal's got to be in on him with the uncertainty with Kirby Dach. But a guy like Cousins, a 24-year-old centerman, I think there's a lot of teams that will put their hands up and say, this is a guy that we want for the now and for the future. But that's what Montreal needs to continue to do, is tinker and add to the group with a purpose. Not for the purpose to try and make the playoffs this year, to be a perennial playoff team and get to the next level. So I think they're going to be measured, But if there's a deal to be made either way to move out a pending unrestricted free agent, a Savard, somebody like that, you make it, but you don't do it just for the sake of making a trade. You do it with a purpose moving forward. And I think that's what they're going to do in Montreal. If they're adding, it's going to be somebody that is going to fit into the group, not just for the rest of this season, but for the future as well.
3/4 of the way through the season, and every single Canadian team is still in the hunt for a playoff spot, so potentially buyers. Every single Canadian hockey fan has at least one wish in common, that one of these clubs could become the first Canadian team to bring home the cup for the first time since 1993.